Hello, good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Greater Baltimore Urban League's Rona Rap.
Hello, everyone. We are here tonight to talk about our youth Kickback webinar series and GBUL's Black History Month seminar. And we just want to create a safe space for our youth to discuss any concerns, thoughts, or feelings. And we just want to be able to learn how to keep to ourselves, our communities, and families, and just keeping each other safe during this time of the pandemic and COVID.
The National Urban League was founded in 1910 and is the nation's largest and oldest community-based movement devoted to empowering African Americans to enter the economic and social mainstream. The Greater Baltimore Urban League movement was founded in 1924. GBUL has been helping disadvantaged Marylanders gain access to equal opportunity in employment, education, healthcare, housing, and the civic arena since its inception. Learn more about GBUL at gbul.org.
Okay, so for some introductions, my name is Joshua Wilson. I am an 11th grader at the Baltimore City College High School.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Pinkney. I'm a 12th grader at the Baltimore Polytechnic Institute.
I'm Lacey Reddit, and I am a junior at Baltimore City College High School. We'll have 4 pandemic-related topics. We'll use Kahoot to introduce the topics. As questions are posed, we'll briefly, give our answers while the audience can enter their response on their phone. You don't have to participate in the Kahoot, but if you do, you'll need 2 devices, most likely a laptop and a cell phone to enter your responses and to look at the live stream.
But before we get into our Kahoot, we're going to have our guests here introduce themselves.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint. I serve as the Executive Director of a national nonprofit organization called Healthcare Ready.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jadan Phillips. I am a family practitioner at Stony Brook University Medical School in New York. I'm also the Associate Dean of Student and Minority Affairs at Stony Brook Medical School as well. And I am a Johns Hopkins University grad and a University of Maryland at Baltimore Medical School graduate.
Thank you, guys. I just want to thank everyone for coming. And now we would like to have everyone log into a website called Kahoot. You can do this off of sharing a split screen on your computer, or you can also do it off another device such as your phone. And so the website is kahoot.it. KAHOOT.IT, and you're going to enter the following pin that you see on the screen to sign up, and you can put your nickname or name. And then, so basically, we're just going to have questions for everyone to look at, and it's going to pop up on your screen. And we are going to see everyone's choices that they choose, and then we're going to announce the correct answer, and then we'll just expand on the conversation. So if you guys can all do that right now, that would be very much appreciated. And we're going to have 4 topics that we're going to talk today, so I hope you guys like our conversation. I'm going to log in now.
All right, we're going to start the Kahoot. Our first section of the game will be Pull Your Mask Up Shorty, which is about, safety and proper way to wear your mask and safety precautions. So the first question is, since we breathe primarily through our mouths, is it okay to use your mask like a chin strap, which is just having it like under your chin instead of covering your full face? I want to open up if anyone else wants to expand on, this.
Well,
Um,
first,
you can
sorry.
go.
Well, like a lot of times, like I see people, like walking around like with the mask underneath, like kind of here or just covering their mouth, but then they're like breathing normally, like through their nose. And it doesn't really make sense to me because I'm like, you breathe through your nose and your mouth, so it's not really serving like any purpose or being like efficient to stop spreading the virus. So that is just what I think about that.
And Lacey, you're right. A lot of people, unfortunately, we stylish folks. We want something to be effective, but it's got to look good. And I think that unfortunately adds to a whole lot of risk, because if you don't have your mask on right, it's basically like not having a mask on at all.
Mhm.
And as if people are seeing in the news, there are these new, more infectious strains of the virus that are out here. And what that means is it's going to be even easier for you to get COVID, especially if you're not wearing your mask appropriately. I think the other thing, in this age of the full beard and everybody got their real big beard going on, you've got to be mindful that if you trying to preserve the look of your beard, again, you won't have the mask on where it's fitting you appropriately. And again, a mask not fitting right is just like not having a mask on at all.
And the other
Right.
thing is, when you're moving your mask on and off your face, your hand is touching your face. So if the whole idea is to make sure that your hands are clean when you're even taking your mask off and putting your mask back on, if you just came out of the supermarket and you pull down your mask, well, everything that's on your hands is now on your face. So keep that in mind too when you're thinking about when to take it on and off.
Yeah, and also it's like I know a lot of people, they actually don't realize that the mask is supposed to be pulled over your nose, not just your mouth. So that's because there's so many ways that this virus can be spread. And also, like, even if you do have like a lot of disposable masks that you have to keep throwing away, I suggest also a cloth mask because of the fact that you can take that home, wash it, and then rewear it again. So that helps with all, like, anything if going out in public and this, that, and the third. So just in case anybody didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah, like,
definitely.
oh, you got it, Lacey. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, at the like very beginning, around like February, my family bought like a bunch of masks and filters, and like they like
Mhm.
obviously with switching the filter out and washing them, they've been able to stick around through like for a year. So like
Yeah.
they work. Like if you swap out the filters and you like keep it clean, yeah, just like get a cloth one, it'll work.
So let me ask you guys a question. You're in school, one of your friends walking down the hallway got their mask over under their nose or on their chin. What happens in school? Does the security guard come and tell you to pull your mask up? Would you be a person that might say, yo, why don't you pull your mask up? I mean, how does that go down in school?
I turn and leave.
Okay. Okay.
I would definitely, tell my friends like, hey, maybe like keep your mask up, for safety of us and everybody else. Because I find that a lot of times, a lot of people that wear their masks wrong and like don't take the right COVID precautions are the ones mainly trying to get back to normal life. And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, one, we're all trying to get back to normal life, but you're not taking the right precautions isn't gonna help either. So yeah, and what Jocelyn was saying about cloth masks, like cloth masks, like with filters, also like be better for the environment too. So not like disposing like however many masks per day or per week. So that's just what I wanted to add in.
And most
Yeah.
masks aren't single use, right? So even if you
Mm.
have a disposable mask, unless you're doing the absolute most and going out and really like, putting makeup all over it or trying to constantly manipulate it, you can probably get at least a good 5 uses out of a disposable mask. And if you put a cloth mask over it, Dr. Phillips was talking about the different variants that are out here that are more contagious. That's safer. But if you put a cloth mask over it, it's going to last longer. So I've been able to do that and get 10 uses out of a disposable mask.
I actually didn't know that. Thank you for telling me that. Because I
Yeah.
always did sort of have the question of like, because I've seen like even some of my friends do this where like they'll wear like double masks. I think I've seen President Biden do this a couple times as well. And like, I guess I want to know like, does that really like work? Because it kind of seemed like extra, but if it works, then I'll do it for sure.
So the way I try to think about it is Swiss cheese. So when you see Swiss cheese, it has all of these holes in it.
Mhm.
So the idea is every additional layer of protection, basically, if you line up Swiss cheese, it's going to give another layer, right? So because nothing's perfect, if you're thinking about Swiss cheese, like, a single mask, for example, things might still be able to get through. But if you have a mask on and you use another mask, fewer things are going to get through. And now, if you're washing your hands, fewer things are going to get through. And if you're social distancing, even fewer. So that's the idea, is that every layer of added protection, whether that is social distancing, washing your hands, or wearing a mask or 2 masks, gives you an extra layer of protection from anything that might be able to get through, because no one solution is going to be perfect.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So you would suggest wearing like 2 masks, like that would be the better option.
So when I go to the supermarket, I wear 2 masks.
Okay.
And I wear and how to wear them is as important as wearing 2 masks. So I want to talk about how to do it properly. You wear the mask that has the most protection closest to you. So like if you have a surgical mask, the blue ones that have like blue and white one side and white on the other, you
Yeah.
want that closest to you, and you want the cloth mask over it.
Okay.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I definitely have to try that now when I go out. So thank you for that.
Plus, it allows you to keep the stylish mask on the outside, so you
Yeah.
keep your cool. You keep your cool going.
Mhm.
But I think the other thing, just to add one more thing, we've seen recently that the government has made the mandate that if you're on any public transportation or bus station, train station, you need to make sure you have a mask on. And, unfortunately, we know all too well of if we give those folks the excuse to affect us, bother us, they will come and do it. So if you want at the train station or bus station and you don't have your mask on, they may pull up on you and interfere or interrupt your day. So again, this masking thing, unfortunately, has now been attached to consequences that can cause you to have interaction with law enforcement. So it's even more important to be aware of the recommendations, which is like now, you must wear a mask if you're in any type of transit hub, bus station, train station, on the bus, on the train, in the airport. All of those moments require you to have a mask on.
Okay, thank you. All right, so our second topic, we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but it's about like Zoom classes and virtual schools and like, how do you feel about virtual school if you are in school, or even if you have like a kid that's in virtual school, how do they feel about it, or how do you think they feel about it?
I have a lot to say about this. um, it's like so me personally, like when I was younger, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be a homeschool kid. I want to go, I can just roll out of bed, wake up whatever time I want to, stay in my pajamas all day, having fun. Like that was just like how I was as a kid, I could just stay home, whatever. I did not expect it to be in a global pandemic. So like It's because it's kind of like I was so expecting, to have friends outside, that I could always, go and see. But now it's like, especially myself with underlying health conditions, I can't really see anyone besides like the people that live in my household, or I would be like really far away, like it's like behind a car window, saying hi to other family members, or regardless of what it is. It's especially it's also like a mental health kind of thing too, because like you're like not really getting like social interaction, like in-person social interaction, I should say, because especially like me, a person, I have anxiety, so kind of being like it's just kind of by myself doesn't really help. I mean, there's things that I can do, like there's like virtual, like online therapy, things like that. But when you're on school, just kind of moving, like clicking the Zoom link. All right, let me leave. Clicking the Zoom link. It's just really tiring. It really is.
Yeah. Jocelyn, are you gonna say something or?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about virtual school, especially because like this is my senior year, so this really wasn't expected at all for me. I kind of wanted to end my high school in school rather than at home, but I guess it was all just the adaptation of it all because of the fact that it was something that we all didn't see coming, we all didn't expect it, and I feel as though virtual school there are benefits only because like you are like looking out for the safety of students going to and from school, being in school, sanitary precautions, but it's also like things that you can enjoy. We don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. anymore to get on the bus stop, go to school. We don't have to walk around the classes. I can enter my class while I'm still in my bed. Uniforms. I mean, we still wear. I'm pretty sure everyone doesn't wear uniforms, but we can still wear uniforms from our houses. Um, and also just like virtual school, I feel as though it definitely did affect me because of the fact that like I'm a hands-on type learner. So like if I need help going to office hours, sometimes that's not enough for me because I need to be face to face. I need to see, okay, what did I do wrong on this problem, this, that, and the third. Maybe I really do need to go to an in-person coach class to where I feel as though the help will be beneficial. And it's just like things like that, like especially with the college process, it's been very hard because I can't even talk to my counselors as I wish I could have. Like I wish they could have like, okay, this is how to do this, how to use like Naviance. This is like a person in person type thing, and we have to do all that online, and it's just like how long is this gonna? How more like are we gonna go through this? Because I might be doing the same thing through college. People in middle school might be doing the same thing through college. We don't know that yet. So it's just kind of like we really just have to see where it goes and also just adapt with it at the same time because it's what we have now and we just have to use it to the best that we can.
Well, what was the college application process like for you? Trying to do it all online?
I can definitely say it was stressful. I feel as though a lot of it was self-reliant because of the fact that it's like we don't have those counselors and like parents and all. You have to get information from them, then you have to ask for teacher recommendations. You can't even ask the teacher in person. You have to send them an email, and that's if they check the email or respond to your email. The counselor meetings, we would have to schedule a counselor meeting, and also it's kind of like, oh, you can't schedule too many meetings because they have to get to every other student in your class, and it's like very overwhelming. I can admit it because I sometimes reach like, okay, what do I do next? What do I do next? College decisions are starting to come in, and then you have to send the decisions to the counselors, and it's just a lot of going back and forth, which can be very like confusing, and it can be draining because I know sometimes I have to take a break. I'm like, okay, I need to just get myself together to make sure I know that I'm on track, that I'm with keeping up with the college process, make sure I'm not slacking. And then the scholarships, and it's just like it just adds on. Like it just adds on. It doesn't really stop. But I mean, at the end of the day, it is all worth it because you're doing this for yourself. It's the education that you need. But I mean, it is definitely a process. I can say definitely a journey. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I would say kudos to you, Jocelyn and Lacey and Joshua. I mean, you guys spoke on some really important things just now that, number one, identifying how traumatic and difficult this time is on multiple levels. You know, Lacey, you talked about the physical health and mental health consequences, and those things have been very real. You know, the mental health aspect, it is not discussed with the frequency that it deserves. And it is one of those issues that is behind every single situation that you deal with COVID. The health consequences. There was recently an article that came out in a pediatric journal talking about weight gain during the pandemic in the pediatric population. So again, there's consequences that we're seeing. You know, as you alluded to, Jocelyn, you know, the differences now in the whole process of applying. Now, you sound like a person that has, and my next point is embraced the pivot or the adaptation that we've all needed to do. Now, let me share for myself. As I've told people, when I graduated from medical school in 1995 from University of Maryland, I didn't have to use a computer. I didn't have an email account. I didn't have any of those things that I needed to do. And in recent years, we've had to become more able to use this technology. But most recently, if I wanted to continue seeing patients, I had to make sure that I'm able to handle telehealth, which is taking care of patients via these types of services. So if I wanted to continue making money, and I didn't get scholarships to medical school, my parents didn't pay for it. I took loans out, which I'm still paying in 2021 for school from 1991 to 1995. So there's a level of I got to. And I think one of the things that we as people of color are very good at is embracing and incorporating the I got tos. Unfortunately, during this pandemic, the I got tos have affected us in a bad way. You know, we live in households that may not have the technology that you can comfortably do this. I give you a story. I remember when I was a fourth-year medical student at Maryland, I had gotten my car towed because I spent a couple nights in the hospital on a rotation, and I was on a fixed income. And I lived right off of Martin Luther King Boulevard and Holland Street, and I lost my telephone because I had to pay for my car because it got towed. I had to use the telephone that's right next to the Silver Dollar Diner. And at that time, the projects were still up. So that was a live corner. So when I needed to use the telephone, I had to go over there. Now, firstly, because these young men were out there doing their thing, I had to make peace with the hood so that I could use the phone, you know. But again, I say this to say that we are people that have the ability to adapt and to pivot. And this pandemic, unfortunately, because it's been one thing that has interrupted our normal process, the normal process of applying to college, the normal process, if you're interested in a certain specialty like medicine or law, how do you go and do further work to enhance your attractiveness? How can you get a shadowing opportunity or a research opportunity? So what we have to continue doing, as you guys have shown us in your comments, is we got to continue to be able to pivot. And the other thing, and Dr. Nicolette mentioned this the other night, an intentional nature of how we go about this. It can't be something that we just say it's going to happen just because I want it to. We've got to do things to make sure that we are staying in that space so we can stay effective. Like, again, using this technology of Zoom or StreamYard or whatever it is, I had to go through some updates and some tutorials to get my skill game up, because otherwise y'all would be looking at me like, can he really be able to manage this? You know, but again, this is yet another example of the resilience of us Black and brown people here in America. Don't let this be something that is challenging or stops you, because I will tell you this, I'm on the admissions committee at Stony Brook. people are still applying to medical school,
Yep.
and they still trying to pivot to find things to enhance themselves. So even though the world might have stopped for a couple months during this pandemic, it has started back up. And the thing that I worry about with COVID is not that it's going to kill our young people, but it's going to disable them. And what I mean by that is take you out of the position where you can pursue your dreams or be a person that can make a gainful living so you can take care of yourself. So again, I think what you guys have alluded to are big issues, not just for young people, even for us older folk. But I think, again, as you said, that ability to adapt and the intentionality in that ability to adapt is very, very important.
But I'll say this though, as you're applying, and honestly, Jocelyn, when you were talking, you took me back to flashbacks I had. We were joking about it before, but Dr. Jadan and I grew up in New York. We're from New York originally, and I remember there's a big post office on 33rd Street, and I remember running to the post office with all of my applications printed out in my hand at like 11:15 that night. Like running up those stairs trying to get those applications in by 11:59. They just needed to be stamped before 11:59. But I remember for me, one of the things about deciding about college was the beginning of it is, who will accept me? I just want to get into college. But by the end of it, you're going to have acceptances. And now you've got to decide, where do I want to go? Which is a very different question. And what I would just remind you to do is pay attention to how the colleges you've applied to have taken care of their students during COVID. Because when you are in a fixed income, when you are living off of student loans, when you have to make decisions about, do I need to stay on campus to keep my scholarship? All of those things, you want to know that you're going to a school that will take care of you. And if you're looking at just what those schools are doing right now, you'll see it in press releases, you'll see it on their main website. And if you don't have confidence that they would be taking care of you if you were actually a student right now in the middle of the pandemic, please don't go there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Yeah. I've sort of been gathering my thoughts on this like whole conversation the entire time. And like I guess a lot of what you guys said is like reflective of how I feel. Like, I'm so sick of like Zoom meetings. Like like you wake up, just get your laptop, log on, sit there for that hour. There have been so many days in classes where I've just been like so just tired of everything where I'll just like fall asleep in the middle of a wake up at lunch. I was just first period. What happened? I was that bored. And like I guess in a way, like the virtual school environment, it's like in around like March or April when like this whole COVID thing like really started. Like that's like really first when I became like diagnosed as like depressed because like the whole not being able to see your friends and then like waking up just to like log on to like a little virtual meeting. It was it felt like you're living in a loop almost. Like yeah, it feels like your life is just like a big dream that just keeps like repeating itself.
Yeah, I want to add on to Josh and Dr. Phillips. Like mental awareness in the Black community is such a big. I mean, it was a big thing before, but now more than ever, it needs to be addressed. Like there are some students who don't even have Wi-Fi during the day, like pushing in and out of classrooms when you're just trying to learn. Like me, and Xfinity is a whole nother issue and scamming people, but regardless, there's a huge problem that with mental health, especially me knowing myself. I was able to go to therapy before the pandemic, and now when resources are limited, I can imagine how much harder that even is now, especially if you don't have Wi-Fi at home. Like, how can you really access a therapist online? Do you even have money for a copay? Especially, if you're on unemployment or regardless of what it is. And now there are some people down in the South, they don't have power. People are dying, whether it is from COVID other things outside of COVID, because that's still happening too. People are still dying from other things besides COVID. Like, I just, I really don't understand. I guess kind of looping back into the previous topic, why people like who are against masks, regardless if you believe that COVID is real or not, people are dying from something. And if people say that you need to wear a piece of cloth on your face to help people stop dying, are you that selfish that you don't want to wear a piece of cloth on your face?
Yes,
I mean, and if
they are.
let's
No,
just say if it
I'm not being
isn't
funny.
real
They
and
are.
cloths don't help, what's the next step? Because obviously something is happening that people are dying from.
Well, I think the other thing, I'm sorry, Doc, you go first. I'm sorry.
You sure? Oh,
Mhm.
so I'll say this though, and I really wasn't saying it to be funny. Like, yes, they are that selfish, because part of what happens is when things are not happening to you, it is
Mm-hmm.
easy to look at it and say it's not a big deal. And the reality is that not everyone is hurting from COVID in the same way. And so what I've heard people say is, well, it's only killing 2% of the people that it's infected, but it's infected 10 million people. That's not trivial. We've lost almost 500,000 people. That we make a big deal about 9/11. And as somebody who's in emergency management, it was a big deal. But when you look at numbers and you look at lives lost, I'd look at that and say 500,000 people who didn't need to die is a big deal. But other folks will look at that and say 500,000 people who are probably going to die anyway. And that is the mindset that we're working against right now, because yes, it is a piece of cloth. But when you're not used to having to be uncomfortable for the sake of others, and when you're not used to having to think about community sacrifice in that way, now you're asking me to be uncomfortable, and I don't want to be. And that's really, in some ways, what it comes down to, is either thinking about it like this pandemic isn't affecting me. I'm being asked to be uncomfortable, and not that many people around me are dying. And that's really what we're fighting right now, is the idea that, yeah, it is just a piece of cloth. Yeah, you might be uncomfortable, but if you did it and you consistently did it, we could actually get out of this. But it takes community sacrifice, and some folks don't want to do that.
I agree with what Dr. Lewis Saint said. Again, to add on to that, sometimes it may not make you sick, but it could affect you in other ways. You guys just alluded to the frustration of virtual learning. How could we change virtual learning? There are countries around the world that, because they took such a dramatic stance on those protective safety measures, they had COVID under control even before we needed a vaccine. So again, people say they want certain things, and then unfortunately, if you don't act in a certain way, then those things won't happen. The other thing is, even though you may not be the one that gets sick, they say that young people are the more likely to be the ones spreading COVID. So as I said, imagine, Jocelyn, you go home from college, you're away at college enjoying, but mommy makes that, that lake trout on Friday that tastes good. Or my grandmother makes that crab cake that is something, or that crab soup that is something to die for. And you recognizing that you're supposed to be going home this weekend, you've been playing on the campus the whole time. You come home, and then right after you get back to school, mommy or grandma calls you, man, I'm coughing a lot. Next thing you know, they're in the hospital because they got COVID. And next thing you know, if they had a story in the Washington Post in the beginning, and it was a young lady, it was in the summertime of last year, she lived with her grandmother. That was her caretaker. She was going about doing her business, didn't think about masking, said, I'm not going to get sick, unknowingly brought it home to her grandmother who died. Now, the one person she got in the world to take care of her, to look after her, that she can trust, is gone. And unfortunately, this is a lesson, as I may have mentioned earlier, we don't learn sometimes. When I was young, I didn't learn to my late 20s, on how to be thoughtful and see how what I do affects other people. But unfortunately, this pandemic has made all of us have to be more selfless, not selfish, selfless. Look, I'm vaccinated, but I know that even being vaccinated, I could theoretically give COVID to somebody else. So when I go out and about, I got my mask on because, again, that's a consequence that I don't want to have. And the other part of it is, as I said in the beginning, if you guys want school and all of these things to start being normal, I was on another high school call and the question was asked, my 18th birthday is coming up and I want to have a hotel party. Do you think I should still do it? And I said, it would be nice to reach your 19th birthday. Or better yet, don't have your birthday be the reason that so-and-so's mother died and they didn't even come to the party. And that's how this stuff happens. And you could either, as my grandmother says, you could either learn from listening or feeling. And the feeling part of this don't feel good at all because the cuts that COVID is cutting and delivering are deeper than any cuts that we've ever seen. As Dr. Lewis Saint just said, there are so many people that have died in 2020 and 21 that weren't supposed to die this year. And the majority of cases that we are seeing now are from inappropriate social gatherings. So again, people getting together, not doing the right thing, and that's how this thing is spreading wildfire. And the other thing is now actually in the Black and brown community, you're seeing even younger people now get more sick. So as I said, even though you may not be the one that we would expect to get very sick from COVID, you still could.
Right. And don't forget that we still don't know what happens after you recover from COVID. So we talk about it from the idea that you could die from COVID, but living after you've been infected, we don't know what that's going to look like. I know people who were infected with COVID months ago, and they still can't fully taste. They still have a lot of fatigue that they're trying to manage. They still have aches and pains that can't really be resolved with just taking, some Advil and hoping for the best. And they're 32. Imagine having to live with that for the rest of your life if you could avoid it, right? So that's the other part. It's not like the flu where you say, oh, you got the flu and you're done. We don't know that yet.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially because I have friends that have caught COVID and they're around the same age as me, which is around 17, 18. And it was just seeing them actually go through it. They would be like, oh yeah, it's I'm coughing. They didn't have taste, smell. One of my friends, they was like, oh yeah, well, I didn't test negative anymore. Oh, I mean positive anymore. And then they still couldn't taste. I was just like, are you sure you're okay? And it's just they were like, yeah, I'm fine, but this is really this can happen to anyone. And like you were saying, the social gatherings, I mean, I'm not really into celebrity life, but it's when they go to all these clubs and stuff, it's literally hundreds of people in there with no mask and they're so close together. And then when they leave and 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, how'd I get COVID? It's you kind of put that upon yourself. And it's just weird. And then when it is a vaccine, they'll be like, oh, I don't trust the vaccine. And also that led me to a question for Dr. Phillips. You said that you were vaccinated. Were you skeptical to take it? Because I feel I would be personally, only because of the fact it's okay, the vaccine kind of came out of nowhere. They were already having different concoctions put together. So what made you really be okay, let me get vaccinated, I'm going to be okay after this?
Well, I trust the education that I've received from the beginning through college, through medical school. So I was not that skeptical of the science. Now, I do understand the historical significance of being skeptical with the treatment that we've received in this country. But again, I also, Dr. Lewis Saint alluded to 9/11. And for firemen and police officers in New York, that was their moment to step up. Right now, as an African-American medical provider, I feel that because, number one, I'm a person that can relate to the folks, that I have a duty to be involved in this. And part of that duty for me was to be a guinea pig, if I was to look at it that way. So I was willing, so you could ask me, how did my experience go? I was willing to go before you, Jocelyn, Joshua, and Lacey. So that was what I was willing to do. And I was afraid and nervous to a certain extent, yes. But again, you see who's getting vaccinated the most. Why, if they trying to kill us, why are they getting the vaccine? You know, if you say that white America is trying to kill black people, white America is getting vaccinated at 4 times the rate that we're getting vaccinated. You know, so if they're trying to kill us, that's definitely not the thing that they would do if that's the thing that's going to kill us. So again, you know, unfortunately, I think sometimes it's like being in an abusive relationship. It's kind of hard to get out of it. And I think we have been in an abusive relationship in the United States. And again, you know, it's kind of hard for people to take a chance in trust in people that, unfortunately, like January 6th, that didn't help people want to get vaccinated, because we watched what happened on January 6th and said, if the faces that I see right here went down to the Capitol, they'd have bodied all of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then these same people are saying, hey, you need to take the vaccine. But again, the politics of it and the science of it are two different things. And we can't let the politics and the social history keep us stuck, because what I do know is that COVID is affecting us at a rate that is much more significant than other ethnic groups. And unfortunately, one of the things that contributes to it is the circumstances that a majority of us live under in our communities. So that doesn't afford us a lot of protection from COVID and actually puts us in the harm's way of COVID. So again, I do believe that to counter that, we do need to get vaccinated. So with all of that being said, I wanted to be a model so that you could say, I know somebody that did it, and he don't have, I only got 2 arms, I don't have a tail, you know, I'm good, you know, and I'm now, today is a month after my second shot.
Oh, okay.
But you know what? I think that everything Dr. Phillips said is absolutely right. And I think that's why it's so important for us to tell our stories about getting vaccinated. But I also don't want you to just trust us. I want you to be comfortable enough to look up the information, because you said something so interesting to me. And I think I even like reacted for a second, because you said concoctions when we were talking about the vaccine. And I think it's important that, especially as you guys are talking about going to school and deciding on college or whatever you major in, doesn't matter if it's English, doesn't matter if it's business, take a single science class. Because I want you to be able to not have to trust me and what I tell you about the vaccine or what I tell you about a pandemic. I want you to be able to read that information and come to a decision and maybe ask me questions, but know what's in it for yourself. And the truth of the matter is, there is a lot of public information about the vaccine, what's in it, how they studied it, how it came to be. It didn't just come to be in 9 months. That's not true. We've been working on these types of vaccines for these types of disease outbreaks for at least 20 years. So there has been a lot of science on this. And the truth of the matter is, if you have taken 2 science classes in college, which most of us haven't, like, let's start there. That's not that most people have. You would be able to read this stuff and understand it for yourself and know like what questions you want to ask. But because we've made it so hard for people to get science education in this country, especially people of color, it's going to be hard for you to get that information and read a CDC website by yourself or read a report on a vaccine trial by yourself. And it's not your fault. It's the fault of the systems that we've put in place and the barriers we put in place that make it hard for us to have more scientific knowledge. So I want you to trust me, because I've gone through the work of making sure that what I say is credible, but I want you to be able to verify on your own and say, okay, she said it's safe. And she said, we've been studying this for a while, but now I want to be able to dig in and learn for myself where these studies were done, who they did the trials in, where they came up with this technology, how it actually works. I want you to be able to be hungry for that information for yourself, because I can't guarantee in the next pandemic we're going to be here. And how you navigate it is going to be based off of what you've learned and how you've critically thought about it and how you can make decisions about what's going to be best for you and your family.
Definitely feel like that's helping me a lot, because it's like a different aspect that I can look at it, and it's just like you said, like we can see it for ourselves, because this is the type of stuff that they don't teach us in school, and it's like the things that we really do have to figure out for ourselves, especially going on in like the future of this pandemic, because we don't really know what's gonna happen. So I'm really grateful for you guys like telling me this information, because I'm definitely retaining a lot of it going into like the real world, because we don't really know what it's like. So thank you guys for this one. Like I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, say it is like really helpful to like, especially just sit down with like two doctors and like, I've heard things from like, my parents and from the news and from like, teachers and stuff like that. But I think that it was a really great opportunity to sit down with like two people who are like at the very front of it and have a conversation about it. Because at the beginning, I was one of the people who was skeptical of the vaccine, like because at first my mindset was like, it came really fast, and sort of as you touched on earlier with like the treatment of colored people in America, was like I was skeptical of it, and then eventually I learned a little bit more, and I sort of trusted it. But it was more of a thing of like I'll take it if I can like go to a restaurant again. So yeah, I guess like sitting down, like I have a lot more trust in it now than I did like 2 hours ago.
And I mean, look, I'm laughing, but I'm laughing because if you remember during the campaign season, Vice President Harris was on the stage and somebody was like, "Are you going to take the vaccine?" And she was like, "If Donald Trump tells me to take the vaccine, I am not taking the vaccine. But if somebody I trust tells me to take the vaccine, I'll take it." Right? And she's the vice president. So, I mean, it's not like you're alone. And I think that actually, to Dr. Phillips' point about politics and how it played a role, I think who was in the presidency and how they talked about the vaccine did more to hurt us than anything else. Because if you had people you trusted talking about it, and if he just didn't say anything, I think some of the skepticism would have gone away. But when you got a vice president, like, if he tells me to take it, I ain't taking it. Like, of course, if she feels that way, the rest of us would feel that way too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was that, and then like when the vaccine, was first like ready for like emergency use, like, seeing like Mike Pence take it on TV and like, get a bunch of like governors and, senators take the vaccine. I guess that was sort of more like calming with it, because I was like, they wouldn't give it to the president if it wasn't, safe. But then even still, it's like the way that politicians are, like a lot of politicians are corrupt, and like I wouldn't. This might sound very bad. I wouldn't put it past like some politicians, especially like conservative ones, to like take a fake vaccine. Like again, this probably sounds very bad, but like I was skeptical. Like, what if they just like took water in the arm or something, and it's like you guys can trust this vaccine, and then people start dying after taking the vaccine.
Well, Joshua, and that was one of the reasons why, in my position, I was able to volunteer to do different aspects of this whole process of dealing with the vaccine. So I've been in the position where I was administering vaccinations, and I had to draw the vaccine out of the vial and inject it into somebody's arm, because I have friends that would ask the same question. Yo, how we know that's not water, son? And again, I could say I was there. I saw the process of how they monitor it. I actually drew it up and injected it. So again, that's why I got involved, because I wanted to be able to tell you without it being a secondhand story, that from what I saw, and I was paying attention to everything. And as the doctor, I can move throughout and nobody's telling me to stop. I did not see any of that weird stuff.
And I would never tell you that a disaster is not politicized. Like what's happening in Texas right now, right? There's a political element to all of this, but there's a difference between how science and medicine can be used for public health and how it can be used by politicians. I'm actually happy to hear you say that you watch people get vaccinated, because I was the type of person that's like, I don't care who they stick, with a needle on TV. But for me, it came from a different place. So it is important for me to remember that matters for people, right? And so I appreciate you checking me on that, because I think that's important to be mindful of. But again, to your point, like, you can't just trust that the political side of how we handle this pandemic is all the information you're going to take. You've got to talk to scientists. You've got to understand that there's a medical side of this that has to be addressed by people who know the science and the medicine, and not just the politics.
Right. And that was sort of the thing that I was struggling with, because again, at the very start, like seeing Mike Pence or like Senator McConnell taking the vaccine, like I'm not gonna trust that, because like I said, politicians are corrupt. Like I would trust a doctor a lot more than a politician in this sense. But the more like commercial, like media pushed side of it is the politics, and AOC took the vaccine and let's put this on, every news outlet. Instead of what doctors are saying about it. So yeah, again, like I said earlier, it's great to be able to like sit down and have this conversation about it.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Great to talk to you guys.
Yes. I mean, you guys make me feel great, yo. Sometimes as the older person, you worry about what's coming behind you. But you guys today have made me very, put my worries at rest, because I see the young guns coming up behind us. They ready. And, salute to each of you and all the other students that are part of this event. And, God bless you, because again, this is not easy. But as I said, you guys come from a legacy of survival and success. And this is not going to stop you. It's just going to enhance what your final product is going to be.
And I just want to say, I'm so proud of you guys, to think about how immature I was as a junior or a senior in high school, heck, even a junior or senior in college, right? And to hear you guys talk about these issues with a level of self-awareness, a level of honesty and vulnerability, and really thinking about how this pandemic is impacting all aspects of how you are approaching your lives in the world, to think about still getting your applications in for college on time, managing your anxiety in ways that are keeping you healthy. Those are not small things. And I just want to make sure that you know that we are very proud of you, because it takes a lot to do that and do that well. And we just want to lift that up.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome.
I think.
Oh, you go
sorry.
ahead, Lacey.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, girl.
I was gonna say, I think after we, do our closings, we're gonna have a word from the GBUL president and possibly the National Urban League CEO.
But yes, I do want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for the audience that joined in and participated with us tonight. And as our closing remarks, I want to give a big thanks to Miss Tiffany for allowing us to all engage here tonight into this conversation. I want to thank all our panelists and guests for coming. And we had a great talk. I feel like we all did gain something from it. I hope everyone has a great evening. And for everyone watching, go follow GBUL on our IG, Facebook, and Twitter. And be on the lookout for our next Kickback announcement, because who knows, we might have a part 2. So. And we won't be having our CEO come tonight, but I would like to wrap up this conversation and say thank you to our guests. I really did appreciate having this talk. I feel like Joshua and Lacey feel the same way. And I hope
Yeah.
everyone does have a good night and be safe out here because it is snowing. So,
Yeah.
but good night, everyone.